The break down the desert was endless. The ground was dry and cracked, stretching far into the horizon. The sun above was white and sharp, burning through the thin alien sky. A lone human cart rolled slowly over the dirt road, its small engine coughing with every mile. The man who drove it sat hunched forward, his hands gripping the handles, sweat sliding down his back. He had traveled for many days already, and this last stretch of wasteland felt like it would never end. The cart was old, built from spare parts. It rattled with every bump, shaking like bones ready to fall apart. Still, it had carried him this far, and he trusted the machine to last just a little longer. But machines had their limits. A strange sound broke the silence. The engine gave a sharp cough, louder than before. The man frowned and tapped the side of the console. The cart stuttered again, then grew quiet. The wheels slowed, crunching against the dirt until the cart rolled to a full stop. For a moment, the man sat still. His heart sank as he listened. The wind whistled across the desert, but the engine gave no sound. It was dead. He jumped down and lifted the engine's cover. Heat poured out, stinging his skin. Inside, smoke rose in thin black lines. The smell of burnt wires and oil filled his nose. He cursed under his breath and checked the connections, but most were charred and melted. The machine was finished. The man stood up, brushing dust from his hands. Around him stretched miles and miles of empty wasteland. No houses, no towns, no signs of life. Only rocks, sand, and the far-off cry of strange birds circling in the hot sky. He had no spare engine, no tools to fix the damage. He was stranded. As the sun dipped lower, the shadows stretched longer across the desert floor. The air grew cooler, but the silence became heavier. Every sound seemed louder now. The scrape of his boots, the click of small insects, the distant howl of something unseen. The man's chest tightened. Night was coming, and night in this desert was dangerous. He looked at the horizon, hoping for smoke from a camp or a light from a settlement. Nothing. Just the endless glow of dying sunlight and the cold promise of darkness. He climbed back onto the cart, sitting on the edge with his head in his hands. He tried to think. He could walk, yes, but how far? Without transport, without power, he would not last long in this land. A sudden sound made him lift his head. Footsteps. Slow, steady, crunching against the dirt. His heart thudded in his chest. He gripped the metal wrench from the toolbox and held it tight. The sound grew louder. It was not human footsteps. It was heavier, more deliberate. A rhythm of claws against stone. The man narrowed his eyes, staring into the growing shadows. Something was there. Something was moving closer. Shapes danced in the distance as the last of the sunlight faded. He could see a figure low to the ground, moving with grace and caution. It stopped, sniffing the air, then moved again, slowly circling him. The man raised the wrench higher. Sweat rolled down his temple, but his hand did not shake. He had survived too much to fall now. If this was a predator, it would not take him without a fight. The figure came closer, stepping into the dim light. The man's breath caught. It was not an animal, not fully. The creature had the body of a girl, tall and lean, with sharp ears rising from her head and a long tail that flicked behind her. Her eyes glowed faintly, catching the light like two small fires. Her legs bent strong. Her hands rested close to the ground, ready to move on all fours. She looked part human, part wolf, part something alien. She stopped just a few feet away, tilting her head as if studying him. The man held the wrench tighter, his mind racing. She was not attacking, not yet. She only stood there, her ears twitching, her gaze fixed on him. The desert wind hissed between them, carrying dust and silence. For a long moment, neither moved. The man's chest rose and fell with each breath, heavy and loud in his ears. Finally, the girl lowered her head slightly and took one step closer. Not fast, not aggressive, calm, curious. Her eyes shifted from him to the cart, then back to him. The man followed her gaze. His broken machine sat useless, smoke still drifting from the wires. When he looked back, he saw her watching the engine too, almost as if she understood. The silence pressed down harder, broken only by the crackle of cooling metal. The man did not lower his wrench. The girl did not bare her teeth. They simply stared at one another, two strangers brought together by a dead machine in the middle of nowhere. And in that quiet, one thought grew heavy in his mind. Was she here to help? Or to hunt? The encounter, the desert night, was falling fast. The air grew colder, and the last red light of the sun painted the sky like blood. The man's cart sat broken and silent, its engine nothing more than dead weight now. Smoke no longer rose, but the smell of burnt wires still hung heavy in the air. And in front of him stood the creature. She was close enough now that he could see the dust on her fur, the shine of sweat on her arms. Her chest rose and fell quickly, but her glowing eyes stayed locked on him. They did not blink. They did not waver. The man's knuckles turned white around the wrench. His breath was shallow but steady. Every instinct screamed that this being was dangerous. A hunter, a predator, yet she had not attacked. The silence stretched between them, heavy and sharp, until at last she moved. Slowly, carefully, she lifted one hand and pointed, not at him, but at the cart. Her claws were long and sharp, yet her movement was calm, almost gentle. She tilted her head, then tapped her chest with the same hand as if saying, "Let me try." The man frowned. Did she understand? Could she really be offering help? His heart hammered as he glanced back at the engine. It was useless, beyond repair. He knew that. And yet here was this strange alien girl, half beast, half human, offering something he could not explain. He shook his head slowly, gripping the wrench tighter. "Stay back," he muttered, though he knew she could not understand his words. His voice echoed thinly in the empty night air, but the girl did not back away. She crouched lower, dropping onto all fours, her sharp claws digging into the dirt. Her tail flicked once, then stilled. The movement was not of attack, but of readiness, like she was preparing for work. Then, without warning, she moved to the front of the cart. The man's breath caught. He half rose, ready to fight, but she ignored him. She wrapped her claws around the front frame of the cart, her muscles tensing. Her shoulders rolled back, her legs pressed deep into the ground, and then she pulled. The cart shuddered. The wheels scraped against the dirt. The man froze, stunned. The machine was heavy, built from iron and supplies. Even he could barely push it across the desert floor. But this alien girl, this canine stranger, was dragging it forward inch by inch. Her claws tore into the ground for grip. Her arms shook with strain, but she did not stop. With a low growl in her throat, she hauled the cart several feet forward. Then she turned her head and looked back at him, her eyes glowing bright in the rising darkness. The message was clear. Get on. The man's mouth was dry. His mind spun with disbelief. She wasn't attacking him. She wasn't stealing the cart. She was offering to carry it. Carry him. For the first time, the wrench in his hand felt useless. Slowly, almost against his will, he lowered it. His eyes never left hers as he climbed back onto the cart seat. The girl turned forward again, crouched low, and with a sudden surge of strength, dragged the machine forward once more. The cart jerked, then rolled, pulled by nothing but her raw power. The desert night closed around them. The only sounds were the grind of wheels, the scrape of her claws, and her heavy breaths. The man sat in silence, gripping the side rails. The sight before him felt unreal. An alien girl, wild and strong, was his engine now. She carried his weight, his supplies, his very survival, with nothing but muscle and will. But questions gnawed at his mind. Why was she helping? What did she want? Was this a trick? Would she drag him deep into the wasteland only to leave him, or worse? The glow of her eyes, the twitch of her ears, the flecks of her tail in the moonlight, everything about her screamed danger. And yet she pulled on. She worked with determination, never looking back, never slowing. Hours passed. The desert grew darker, colder. Strange sounds rose in the distance, long cries, sharp screeches, the calls of creatures that hunted by night. The man shivered. He knew he would have been lost already if he had been alone, but he was not alone. The girl dragged the cart like a beast of burden, but there was no shame in her movement. She carried herself with pride, even as sweat darkened her fur and dust clung to her legs. Each time the cart caught on a rock or dipped into a rut, she growled low and pulled harder, refusing to stop. The man's fear began to change. Slowly, almost unwillingly, it became awe. He had met many people across many worlds, but never one like her. At last, when the moon was high and silver light painted the desert floor, the cart stopped. The girl released the frame, dropping to her knees, her chest heaving with breath. She turned her head toward him, her glowing eyes softer now, almost questioning. The man swallowed hard. He wanted to speak, but words failed. What could he say? He didn't know her language, didn't know her purpose. But he knew one thing with certainty. She had saved him. The desert around them was still dangerous. The night was still young, but the first step had been taken. man and alien, human and beast, strangers bound not by words but by survival. The silence stretched again, but this time it was not heavy. It was fragile, delicate like the first thread of a bond waiting to grow. The man rested the wrench at his side. For the first time that night he let out a slow breath and whispered to himself, Maybe I'm not alone out here after all. And in the moonlight the alien girl's ears flicked, as if she understood. The struggle. The desert was not kind. The alien girl dragged the heavy cart across the endless wasteland, her claws carving long marks into the dirt. The wheels rattled against rocks, sending sharp vibrations through the frame. Each step she took shook with effort, her shoulders straining, her tail flicking for balance. The human sat at the back of the cart, silent. His eyes never left her. He had seen engines break, machines fail, and men give up. But this girl, this strange wolf-like being, did not stop. Her breaths came fast, sharp, but her pace stayed steady. She was not just pulling a cart. She was pulling survival itself. The moon shone above, silver and cold, casting long shadows on the cracked ground. Strange sounds drifted on the wind. Low growls. High screeches. The man knew they were being watched. Predators lived in this desert, waiting for the weak, waiting for the stranded. He had no doubt they could smell sweat and hear the grinding wheels. Still the girl moved forward. Hours passed. The desert floor grew uneven, broken by jagged stones and small hills. The cart bounced and rocked, nearly tipping more than once. The human gripped the sides tightly, his heart jumping each time the wheels slammed against a hidden rock. Stop, he whispered once, when the ground rose steep, but she did not stop. She growled low, her muscles tensing as she dragged the cart up the incline inch by inch. Sweat dripped from her face, her claws dug deep, and finally, with one final pull, she reached the top. The human leaned back, stunned. He had never seen such raw will. Not from machines, not from soldiers, not even from himself. But the desert was not done testing them. On the other side of the hill lay a stretch of shifting sand. The wind blew hard, carrying grains that stung the skin and blurred the eyes. The girl crouched low, her ears flat against her head, and pressed forward. Each step sank deeper into the soft ground. The cart's wheels spun uselessly, digging shallow pits. The man's chest tightened. She can't pull it here, he thought. It's too much, but she did not give up. With a guttural growl, she leaned forward, pulling harder, dragging the heavy machine over the sinking sand. Her arms trembled, her legs shook, but the cart moved. Slowly, painfully, inch by inch. The human wanted to climb down and push, to share the burden, but something in him froze. Watching her, he felt small, weak. She was a stranger, a creature not even of his kind, and yet she carried him through death's land without complaint. The night deepened. The moon hid behind clouds, leaving only faint light. Shapes moved at the edge of vision, shadows that slithered, crouched, and then disappeared. The man tightened his grip on the wrench again. His ears strained to catch every sound. A low howl rose in the distance. Then another, closer. The girl's ears flicked. She stopped, her body tense, tail stiff. Her glowing eyes scanned the darkness. The man leaned forward, his throat dry. He had heard those calls before, desert stalkers. Fast, lean predators with teeth sharp enough to crush bone. They were not alone. The girl growled low and deep, a sound that vibrated in her chest. She shifted her stance, ready to fight. But instead of leaving the cart, she leaned down again and pulled harder. The cart lurched forward. She was not running toward the beasts. She was running away. The man's heart pounded. The rattling wheels echoed too loud in the night. The smell of oil too strong. He knew the stalkers could follow it. He clutched the wrench tighter, his eyes darting left and right. Then, out of the shadows, two bright eyes flashed. The man's breath caught. A desert stalker appeared on the ridge, long and thin, its body covered in spikes, its mouth wide with needle teeth. It hissed, the sound sharp like knives scraping. The girl's head snapped toward it. She bared her fangs and snarled, the sound so fierce the man's skin prickled. But she did not stop moving. She dragged the cart faster, her muscles screaming, the wheels bouncing violently against the ground. Another hiss, another pair of eyes, then a third. The stalkers were circling. The man rose halfway from the cart, the wrench in his hand, his heart pounding in his throat. He knew what was coming. He had seen stalkers hunt before. They did not rush in. They waited, circled, cut off the escape. Then they struck together. The girl pulled harder, faster, ignoring the strain in her body. Her breaths came in short bursts, but her eyes blazed with fire. She would not stop. The man could see it clearly now. She was not just helping. She was protecting. Suddenly, a stalker leapt from the side. Its long claws flashed in the moonlight as it lunged for the cart. The man shouted and swung his wrench, striking the creature across its jaw. It hissed and recoiled, landing back in the sand. The cart shook, nearly tipping, but the girl dug her claws into the ground and yanked it forward with a roar. The predators hissed again, their glowing eyes multiplying in the dark. But the girl did not slow. She pulled the cart with every ounce of strength, her muscles straining like steel cables. The man, gripping his wrench, realized something he could never forget. This girl, this strange alien wolf girl, was more engine than any machine he had ever known. She was carrying him not because she had to, but because she chose to. The desert wind screamed. The cart rattled. The predators closed in, and yet still, she pulled. The desert was alive with eyes. They glowed in the darkness, circling the cart like floating embers. Dozens of them. The desert stalkers had come, silent and patient, their bodies low to the sand. The night carried their growls like whispers of death. The human gripped his wrench so tight his knuckles turned white. His heart hammered in his chest, sweat dripping down his face despite the cold night air. He had seen predators before, but never this many. The alien girl stood at the front of the cart, her claws dug deep into the sand, her chest rising and falling with sharp breaths. Her ears twitched, her tail stiff, her glowing eyes locked on the shadows. She did not tremble. She did not back away. She growled low, a warning sound that rolled across the desert like thunder. But the predators did not scatter. They hissed sharp and cruel, their long bodies shifting in the sand. They were not afraid. They were hungry, then silence. The night went still, like the desert itself held its breath. The human's chest tightened. He knew what came next. A scream shattered the silence, high-pitched, sharp, cutting through the night like a blade. From the shadows, one of the stalkers leapt. It was fast, too fast. Its claws stretched wide, its teeth glistening in the moonlight. But the girl was faster. With a roar that shook the air, she surged forward. Her claws flashed as she slammed into the predator mid-leap. Sand exploded around them as they hit the ground. Her fangs snapped down on its neck. There was a wet crack and the beast went limp. The man's mouth went dry. He had never seen power like this, but there was no time to think. Two more stalkers charged from the side, their bodies low, their tails whipping like blades. The human swung his wrench, striking one across the snout. It screeched, blood spraying across the sand, but the second leapt past him, aiming straight for the girl. She turned with inhuman speed, her tail whipping the beast aside. It hit the ground hard but rolled back to its feet, hissing. The circle was closing. The girl crouched low, her claws stretched, her growl rising into a roar. She was not only pulling the cart anymore, she was standing between the human and death itself. The predators hissed louder, their bodies weaving back and forth in the sand, waiting for the perfect moment. The human's chest heaved as he stood at the cart's edge, wrench raised high. His fear was real, but something else burned inside him now. He would not let her fight alone. Then the pack struck. 5 predators rushed at once, their eyes blazing, their claws cutting the air. The desert erupted into chaos. The girl met them head-on, her roar tearing through the night. She slashed one across the chest, her claws cutting deep. Another clamped its teeth around her arm, but she twisted, snapping its neck with a brutal jerk. The man swung his wrench again, smashing it against a skull. Pain shot through his hands, but the beast fell back howling. Another lunged for his throat. He ducked, stabbing with the wrench like a spear, driving it deep into the predator's open mouth. Blood sprayed. Sand churned. The night was filled with screams, growls, and the clash of survival. The girl fought like a storm. She moved on all fours, leaping, twisting, striking with claws and fangs. Her muscles rippled with every blow, her tail whipping for balance as she cut through the pack like a blade through water. She was wild, unstoppable, terrifying, but the pack was endless. For every predator that fell, 2 more appeared, eyes glowing in the shadows. The human's arms ached, his chest burned, but he fought on, swinging until his muscles screamed. He was not strong like her, but he was not weak. Not tonight. Then the largest stalker stepped from the dark. It was twice the size of the others, its body covered in jagged spikes, its mouth wide enough to swallow a man whole. It hissed, the sound deep and terrible, and the others fell back, giving it space. The girl's growl dropped low, her eyes burning brighter. Her body was bleeding now, her breath ragged, but she stood tall. She did not yield. The giant predator roared and charged. The ground shook beneath its steps. The man shouted, gripping the wrench, but he knew he was too small to face it. Only she could. At the last moment, the girl dropped low. The beast lunged, its jaws snapping shut where she had stood. With a burst of speed, she sprang onto its back, her claws sinking into its flesh. It roared, thrashing, trying to throw her off. She clung tight, her fangs sinking into its neck. Blood poured across her face, but she did not let go. She ripped, tore, and with one final brutal snap, she broke the beast's spine. The predator collapsed, shaking the ground as it hit the sand. The pack froze. Their eyes flicked from the giant's corpse to the girl standing above it, covered in blood, her chest heaving, her fangs bared in a victorious snarl. Then, slowly, they backed away. One by one, they disappeared into the shadows, their growls fading into the night. Silence returned. The human dropped to his knees, his chest burning, his body shaking. His wrench fell into the sand, slick with blood. He looked at the girl. She was wounded, her fur torn, blood staining her arms and chest. But she stood tall, her eyes still glowing, her breath fierce. She turned her head toward him, and for the first time he did not see a predator. He saw a protector. The desert was quiet now. The danger had passed for the moment. But something stronger had been born in the fire of battle. Not just survival. A bond. The bond. The desert was quiet again. The broken cart stood still, its wheels sunk into the sand. Around it lay the marks of battle, blood on the ground, deep claw prints, the twisted bodies of fallen predators. The air smelled of iron, smoke, and dust. The human sat on the edge of the cart, chest heaving, arms trembling with exhaustion. His wrench lay forgotten in the sand, sticky with blood. His body hurt, but he was alive. And it was because of her. The alien girl stood in front of him, her chest rising and falling with deep breaths. Blood dripped from cuts along her arms and legs, but her eyes still glowed bright, steady and fierce. Her claws were red, her fur torn, but she stood tall, her tail flicking slowly in the moonlight. For a long moment, they did not move. The desert wind blew between them, carrying the scent of death away. The night was cold, but the silence burned with something stronger. At last, the man pushed himself to his feet. His body ached, but he forced his legs to carry him forward. He stopped in front of her, close enough to see the dirt clinging to her fur, the sweat shining on her skin. She watched him carefully, her ears twitching, her chest still rising fast. She did not growl. She did not bare her teeth. She only stood there waiting. The man swallowed hard. His voice cracked as he whispered, though he knew she could not understand. "You saved me." Her ears flicked. She tilted her head as if listening. Then slowly she lowered herself to one knee. She touched the ground with one clawed hand, then pointed back at him. A simple gesture, but the meaning was clear. "I carried you. I protected you." The man's throat tightened. He had seen soldiers abandon friends. He had seen machines fail when needed most. But this stranger, this alien girl who did not know his name, who did not speak his words, had stood against death itself to keep him alive. His hand trembled as he lowered it, letting the wrench fall completely. Then carefully he reached forward. For a moment the girl tensed, her eyes narrowing. But when his hand brushed against her shoulder, she did not pull away. Her fur was warm, rough with dust, damp with sweat. She smelled of earth and iron. He nodded slowly. "Thank you," he whispered. The girl blinked once, then straightened. Her eyes softened. She looked back at the cart, broken and useless, then returned her gaze to him. She stepped forward, brushed past him, and crouched in front of the cart again. Her claws dug into the frame, her muscles tightening. The man's eyes widened. "No, not again," he muttered. "You're hurt," but she pulled anyway. The wheels turned. The cart lurched forward. The man stood frozen, his chest aching. Even wounded, even bloodied, she was willing to drag him further, carry him through the desert until safety was found. For the first time since the engine failed, he felt something he had forgotten. Hope. He climbed back onto the cart, his eyes never leaving her. Every pull, every step was pain for her, he could see it. But her pride was unbroken. She was not just carrying a human. She was proving something to him, to herself, to the stars above. Hours passed. The desert stretched on, but the horizon began to change. Faint lights shimmered in the distance, tiny flickering sparks against the dark. The man's eyes widened. "An outpost, look," he shouted, pointing. His voice shook with relief. "We're close!" The girl turned her head slightly, her glowing eyes catching the lights. Her ears flicked, but she did not stop. She pulled harder, faster, as if the sight of safety gave her new strength. The desert stalkers did not return. The night was silent except for the grind of wheels and her heavy breathing. Step by step she carried him closer, until the sand gave way to rough stone, and the stone gave way to the faint outlines of walls. At last, they reached the edge of the outpost. The human climbed down, his legs weak beneath him. Guards on the wall shouted, pointing down at the strange sight. An alien girl pulling a broken cart with a man inside. The human ignored their stares. He walked around to the front of the cart where the girl now stood, panting hard. Her arms shook, her chest heaved, her fur was soaked with sweat, but her eyes still burned with fire. She released the frame, falling to one knee, exhaustion finally catching her. The man rushed forward, catching her shoulder before she collapsed. He looked into her eyes, glowing faintly now in the light of the outpost torches. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. No words were spoken. No language was shared, but the meaning was clear. She had carried him through fire and blood. She had fought when machines failed. She had proven stronger than steel, braver than fear. The man lowered his head, bowing deeply. "I will not forget," he whispered. The girl's ears twitched. Slowly, a faint smile touched her lips, sharp fangs glinting in the light. She gave one small nod as if to say, "Good, remember." The outpost gates opened. Voices shouted, people hurried forward, but the man did not hear them. His eyes stayed on her, the alien girl who had dragged his life through the desert, who had faced death without fear, who had shown him what strength truly meant. As the guards pulled the cart inside and the gates closed behind them, the man thought one last simple truth: engines could break, machines could fail. But courage, the courage of a girl who fought on 4 legs, was unbreakable, and sometimes when everything else was lost, that was enough to save the universe.